I'm going to start with my basic housekeeping that I always like to do. Um, these slides are mostly to keep me on topic. I like questions, throw them in the chat. I'll cover questions at the end. I've got a lot of info. I'm going to send Doug a copy of the slides tomorrow. And one of the things, since we're talking Tag Manager, there's a little bonus file that I'm going to include with the slide deck that'll help you get started with Tag Manager. That'll be included. A simple import. I am going to throw my email address in the chat window so that if anybody's got any questions after tonight, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I am also easy to find in the Meetup groups. I make my rounds trying to learn new stuff and teach people stuff and answer questions and participate in actually the public being out in public, such as it is. So if anybody can't hear me, raise your hand. Sorry, my humor does not get better. So tonight I'm going to talk Tag Manager. There's a lot of slides. I'm going to pop through most of them fairly quickly because they're just kind of stepping through some of the setup. But I'm going to do a bit of talking about what Tag Manager is and why we might want to use it. So, what is Tag Manager? Tag Manager is it's a system of embedding code snippets for different things into your website. Now, what are these different things? Fairly common: Google Analytics version 4. Quick, easy, very basic. Most of us will use that. But a lot of us might want to install a Facebook pixel or some other type of tracking pixel, maybe a Hotjar, Google optimized before it goes away. There's a lot of these out there for tracking things like heat maps on your website, to see where people are hovering their mouse, where people are clicking and things like that. Facebook pixels for tracking your users over to Facebook for their marketing. Verification snippets. Don't put your verification snippets in Tag Manager. Google needs to know your website exists once, and it doesn't need it on every page visit. There's better ways to do verification snippets. But Tag Manager is a system of putting all of this together in one central location. We don't have to modify the code on our website to do this. Once we've embedded Tag Manager the first time, all the changes that we make to our Tag Manager container are done off-site. Now, fairly common things that we're going to that everybody's going to track with Tag Manager is our demographics, technology, links, forms. What we're looking at is the who, when, the who and what of how people are visiting our website. One of the problems that we've run into is GA4 versus Universal Analytics makes changes to what data is collected. So we'll talk a bit about Analytics 4 next month, but we want to track our e-commerce. This is one of the first reasons why I started going Tag Manager, is because I was finding that to put everything on my site was requiring so many plugins. I had a plugin for Google Analytics that handled my standard traffic. I had a separate one for analytics for WooCommerce. Okay, 2 plugins. I had another one for inserting my Facebook pixel. I had another one for inserting Hotjar. Well, by the end of the day, I've seen sites with 20 different plugins for handling tracking pixels and Google Analytics. The site had 21 plugins. 20 of them were tracking. I mean, it's insane how many plugins we can end up installing. Tag Manager allows us to trim this back. Heat maps. Heat maps are cool. Most of us don't use them as well as we should, if we're even using them. I'm notoriously bad about tracking heat maps and doing that side of the tracking. But media players, how many of us put a video on our website and want to know, did somebody press play? How long did they watch that video for? Did they finish watching that video? Tag Manager, integrated with analytics, allows us to set markers and decide if somebody presses play, we want it to fire at 10% of the video, 25, 30, 50, whatever the percentage is, so that we can start collecting that information to know if those videos are working for us. Obviously, if we've put a video up there and nobody's pressing the play button, why have that video? We should probably put a better video. If everybody's watching the entire video and we're not converting, it's a good video, but it's not helping us. And this type of information gives us that detail to know, should we change something? What do we need to change? Now, for a lot of us, again, like I said, Google Analytics, GA4. GA4 is still officially beta. It is not officially production. But when you look at Google domains only went into production, physical, actual live production last year, despite the fact that everybody's been using it for many years. Google has been officially in beta with certain features. Because of that, GA4, they are continuing to add new pieces often. It works great. It really works great. It's nice. There are features that are lacking. But right now, most of us have been tracking Universal Analytics for however long. And our plugins are designed specific for Universal Analytics. To add GA4, you have to add another plugin because most of them do not have GA4 native. There are a few. I will not name the bloated, unhappy ones that I don't like. And because of that, I don't have any specific ones that do have GA4 incorporated that I can recommend, which is why I use Tag Manager. Google AdWords. If you want to start doing conversion tracking for AdWords, we can use Tag Manager without having to install another plugin. The idea behind this is that we can incorporate things from other services: Bing, LinkedIn, Google, Microsoft, Hotjar, Facebook, Twitter, all of these different analytics, CallRail. We can integrate all these different services without having to have an overabundance of plugins. As I mentioned, I'm going to pop through most of these because it's real basic stuff of what we're going to do. Everybody's here really to learn how to do it, which is what we're going to spend a lot more time on. But I've got a few reasons why you want to look at Tag Manager. Right now, you've got a group of people all working on a website. You've got that marketing team. Do you trust that marketing team to install a plugin and configure it on your website? As somebody that has worked with a marketing team, the answer is probably no. Do you trust the marketing team to give you the valid information to install the plugin and configure it? Probably not. They probably don't know. They saw an advertisement, they thought it was neat, and they want to use it. Which is why they have Facebook, Twitter, Yelp, LinkedIn, et cetera, to track all of these pieces. Douglas, yes, question. Okay. If anybody's got a question, obviously feel free to drop them in the chat window. I am watching the chat. and I will try to answer them as we go, and I'll stop for questions when we get to a few points. But when we're starting to look at multiple different people wanting to add these tracking things, do they know if something's already there? Are they going to start duplicating things? Do they have the knowledge to work on the website? That's always one concern. And then the concern from us as WordPress people, as developers, as people that want performance on our website. What is that plugin going to do to our website? If anybody's installed the Facebook for WooCommerce plugin, you'll remember that it does very little. If you're lucky, it doesn't crash. If you're lucky, it doesn't conflict with anything. But on a good day, it's basically just a performance bottleneck. And there's a lot of other ones out there that they're a niche product. They're designed just to integrate CallRail with the system. Okay, fine. Or to embed the Facebook pixel to the LinkedIn. Most of them are not designed to say, oh, we can just add 30 or 40 different pixels in here by putting one number and it just works. And do we want a plugin that has that many features, Jetpack? So what we're looking at is, what is the performance, security, and compatibility issue that we run into on our site by adding multiple plugins for multiple analytics things? In the case of WooCommerce, let's say you've got the analytics plugin of your choice for your normal site, doesn't do WooCommerce. So you add analytics for WooCommerce, and if you don't configure correctly, it double tracks your regular visitors. So you end up skewing all your results because you're tracking your regular visitors twice, and then you're tracking your e-commerce data. So you end up skewing your results, and then you've got bad performance and bad results. To me, I want something simpler. I want something more straightforward. And that's where Tag Manager comes in. You don't have to be technical to deploy a Tag Manager. If you go to Facebook, Facebook says, here's the pixel, here's how to embed it into Tag Manager. And then it's there. And we can deploy it. And we can deploy it without having to do a code write on the website. Most of us probably have production websites that code changes happen during the maintenance window, once a week, twice a month, once a month, whatever it might be, depending upon the site. If you're not running your updates at least once a month, weekly, I'm sorry. Please run them more often. But we have code freezes. We don't want to have new plugins just deployed willy-nilly in the middle of the week. But Tag Manager, we can deploy a tag without a big notice, and we the performance again, because we're not handling all of these extra plugins. Cost savings. I mean, you can set up a plugin and say, I only want to fire this Facebook pixel on these pages. Okay. I only want to fire off this CallRail plugin, this CallRail tracking on call links. Only if somebody clicks on a tel link, TEL : link. Okay. Why? Yeah, because you don't need to track it on anything else. And if you've set up your site that link only exists on your contact page, you won't even bother firing the thing unless they're on the contact page. Even you can really trim back when these fire without needing to know a lot of code. This is the biggest one. This is a massive, massive piece. Obviously, cookie consent. GDPR, CCPA, and whatever other acronym that they're going to come up with this week, next week, or last week. When we need cookie consent, we can integrate this so that if they have not granted permission, Tag Manager doesn't fire the tags. No need for a plugin on our site that we then have to figure out. We set Tag Manager up and tell it only fire if they've accepted the permission. And then it's a simple setting on the site that says, okay, fire, they've accepted consent, allow Tag Manager, and then it works.
Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
Just a quick question regarding that. So that'll actually work with any cookie consent plugin? Is it a specific way?
I won't say any cookie consent plugin, but I will say that the integration is fairly easy. There are, I don't have the plugin names offhand, but there are several out there. There are several out there that, and I think the name of the one that they recommend, I'll have as we go through later on. But I'll have to double check that one.
Okay.
But it's basically once we set the cookie that allows Tag Manager to run, then then those pixels can fire. In Tag Manager, we also have the ability to fine tune what data we want to collect. If we want to eliminate specific pieces of information, anonymizing IPs and things like that. And a lifesaver of all lifesavers, there is a safe preview feature. So when you've built out your Tag Manager, you can actually preview it and test it before deploying it live on the site. This allows you to find out if stuff works. Because, you know, I mean, how many times have we done something somewhere and realized, well, that didn't work. Safe preview really is helpful. There is also a plugin that works in all your browsers called that allows you to start looking at the Tag Manager data. This plugin is called Data Slayer. It's free, but it works in Firefox, Chrome, and I believe maybe Safari. Doug would have to confirm that one. But it's free, and it allows you to look at the data layer, which is where all of the Tag Manager code is provided. Okay, so I'm going to do one or two more slides, and I'm going to stop for a second for questions, and then we'll dive into how to do it. There we go. DK with the link for us. Now, Tag Manager is free. I love this word, free. All capitals, free. You can't beat free when it works. When it doesn't work, well, that's a different story. Google Analytics is free from Google, Universal and GA4. You notice that I keep throwing Universal and GA4. I've been collecting GA4 since last year, so that side by side, I'll be able to look at my different data year over year. So when GA4 goes live and Universal dies in July, I'll be able to look at last July's data versus this July's in GA4. So I will actually I'll do a quick demo on how to do Tag Manager previews once we hop into Tag Manager itself. So I've been collecting both of them side by side so that I can preview them back and forth. Tag Manager, and again, you'll have these links, and I typed out the links so that they're easier to read because I will convert this to a PDF. Because this PowerPoint doesn't quite work so well on a Mac, especially when I use my weird templates. And then we have a plugin. This is the plugin that ties it all together, does all the magic. It is called Google Tag Manager for WordPress. I know, fancy name. But this is the plugin that allows me to do everything. So I think, yes, I'm going to pause for questions for about a minute or so. But I won't dawdle too long. So throw them in the chat window, unmute if you got them. And if nobody has anything, I will just, now that I've taken my breath, I'll keep going. So the first thing we want to do is we want to configure Tag Manager. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to do this basically live. Bear with me a second to find the right window. There we go. When you go to tagmanager.google.com, if you've got an account, great. If you don't, it gives you the option to create one. Not going to walk through that. It's pretty basic. Use your Google account. I suggest tie it to your business address somehow. Then you end up in here, and when you create your account, it asks for some information. Fairly standard feature is, who are you? My company. Where are you? Whether or not you want to share data with Google. I never check that. I don't want to share data with Google because I don't know if that becomes a GDPR or other hassle. And because I don't feel the need to share data with Google anyway. Just the stuff that they're actually collecting. Container name. Their demo says domain name. I hate putting domain name. I find that it can be awfully confusing when a business is known by one name, but they've got some specialized weird domain name. So I tend to put my actual site name. That's my personal preference. What you put there is what's going to show up as the container name. And then choose web. Once we do this, it is going to give us a prompt to accept all of their tracking. And we have what's called a Google container. If you wanted to do this manually, you could embed this code into your website. I will tell you though, I've seen a lot of people embed the code in their theme. And I'm not a fan because what happens, you decide to change your theme down the line. Somebody else decides to change the theme down the line because you're working at a company. And Tag Manager disappears because the code was in the theme and they didn't know. So that's why I like to use a separate plugin. I just find that it works better for long-term support. What ends up happening though, this code right here, once Tag Manager is built, this code right here is the only one that you need to embed into the website. And then the plugin handles all the rest of the configuration for us. So let me get back here. You notice I now have two accounts, and you can have multiple containers inside of each account. So I'm going to start with I'm just going to switch back over here to the PowerPoint. The first thing that I always do is I set up the two codes that are that do not there are two pieces that are always going to be unique to your container. One is your Universal Analytics setting. The other is your GA4 setting. These two pieces are created as variables, and they are the only piece that is 100% unique to every container. Everything else can be templated, and I'm going to provide this template. So what I do is I come in here, and in my container, I come over to variables, and I create a new one. I give it a name. I always like to do GA is Universal Analytics, GA4 is GA4, FB for Facebook. I like to use standardized abbreviations. And then what I do down here is this configuration. What I look for is I look for Google Analytics settings. You put your tracking code. That's about it. We put our tracking code because we're going to use this to run multiple things later on. This one piece holds the tracking code that's unique to your container, and then we can reuse it. And if we get a new tracking code, we just change the tracking code, and the entire container can be used somewhere else. That code will always be a UA dash something. That's your Universal Analytics code. GA4, you notice it's listed as GA4 property because Google Analytics version 4, oops, I'm going to change this. There is no GA4 setting. But if we use it as a constant, we can put that that code number. Because these are variables, I can reuse these. So it's just a constant with that one piece. What this will end up looking like, I'm not going to save this. I'm going to come over here. What this will end up looking like later on. There we go. Is there will be you'll have a collection of variables. Specifically, these two constants that drive everything. You notice all of these different tags and triggers run off of that one piece. This makes it so that you don't have to recreate the and remember, oh, I have to change the code in 15 different places. You do it in one. Now, the next thing I do is I come through and I set up a few other variables. Because one of the things that we generally want to do is we want to exclude certain users from tracking. You don't usually want to track administrators. So I start to come through here, and these variable names, these are the names that are provided by the plugin. If you go to the his website, there is a write-up on how on all the different variables. But what I've done is I've pre-built the entire container for you that you can download and import. And this variable, this is tracking login state. Are they logged in? And it defaults to, nope, they are logged out. I then create one to see what kind of visitor they are. Visitor type allows me to do other things with this. Variables. Visitor type. Visitor type allows me to block admin users. So when I start to put this together, I get the ability to then start tying things in. So I'm only seeing a handful of people on the screen. Is everybody Everybody good? Nope, nothing. Nothing popping out yet. Perfect. So, what I then do is, because this is the piece that I wanted to make sure I can exclude, is I'm going to create an exclusion specific for on page views for admin users. Oops. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do, I believe it's a trigger. Yes. I would create a new trigger. And in this trigger, I'm going to set it to page view. It'll be right here on the side. Page view. I'm going to choose page view. And I'm going to say some page view. Oh, sorry, Julie. The plugin I'm using is called Google Tag Manager for WordPress. And if you the link is I believe you go to wordpress.org/plugins and do a search on it. Perfect, good. So I've got it set to fire on some page views. And what I'm looking at is visitor logged in state equals logged in. Visitor type regex. Because this allows me to do administrator, but you know what? Maybe I want to also exclude editor. So you can put the pipe in here. I'll put a space. You can put the pipe in here, and you can add a second visitor type. That's the one, Scott. Thanks. And then I always also say debug equals false. That allows me to run the debug mode of Tag Manager while logged in as administrator and get everything to fire. Because it's not going to track me when I'm using debug mode, but it allows me to be logged in as an administrator so that I can look at the back end if I need to make changes and things like that. So I make this basic piece, page view, some page views, this information based on what I need, visitor type of whatever the user account level is. Now, from here, this is where we start pulling our different variables together. So I will create a tag. Now, I guess let me explain the difference. You've got variables. These are your pieces that you're using to pull data from somewhere. These are either a data layer variable, a constant, or a setting. Something that you're predetermining you're going to use to drive something. Triggers are those pieces that actually do the driving. So in this case, blocking admin users, or maybe a user registering on the website. From there, tags are the pieces that actually fire on your website. So in the case of page views, what I'm doing is I'm telling it, okay, I want universal analytics. I want it to track page views, and I want to pull my constant of my GA settings, my piece that I've already predetermined, so that I only have to change my tracking code in one place. I use that piece, and then I come down here and I say, fire this on all page views, with the exception of admin users. So I've now blocked admin users from firing this. One use case I saw, somebody ran an e-commerce solution, but they had wholesale customers, and they didn't want to track those wholesale customers on Facebook. They wanted to track their regular customers on Facebook. So they built an exclusion, and they had a custom user role of wholesale that they excluded tracking for Facebook. Now, That is Universal Analytics page views. So I create a second one for GA4. Basically the same settings, this one being GA4 and using the GA4 property, but still page views exclude my admin users. You will notice there are quite a few other things in here that are paused. So you have the ability to turn these features on and off. I've disabled contact form 7 and e-commerce by default because it's less common that you're going to be using those than standard tracking. But to import this container, if you want, when you go to import this container, it's over here under admin, and there's an option to import. And when you import it, if you're doing an empty container, it really doesn't make a difference. If you've got a container, you want to do merge and you want to do rename, because otherwise you will blow up all the settings in your existing container, especially if you've somehow used the same names. So I'm going to pause for questions again just for a half second here. Okay, well then we'll keep running. There are yeah, Peter, question.
Sorry, I wasn't clear on the difference between the GA and the UA.
Oh, okay. No, that's a good question. So the way I do things is I have some labeling standards that I use. Anything that's doing Google Analytics version 4 is prefaced with a GA4. In the case of this one, this is a Google Analytics 4 event, and then it's running an e-commerce event. So in the case of a standard Google Analytics 4 page view, it's just that.
So is
But
one
that's my
being
naming convention.
is one being phased out and in favor of
Yes,
another?
Universal Analytics is being sunsetted at the end of June.
Cool, cool. And
Yes.
okay, good man. Thanks.
Hey, absolutely glad you're here tonight. So the let's see, GA4. There are a lot of variables in here. I'm not going to step through configuring all of the variables. Because out of the box, as long as you create the GA4 and the universal constants, and then the page views on both of these, that's the basics of being able to track both GA4 and Universal Analytics through here. Now, you'll find that there's going to be a folder in here called GTM4WP that has a lot of variables in it. It also has all the triggers. It has everything in there. So you'll be able to go through and use any of the functionality of the plugin by creating some of the extra triggers, the extra pieces that you might want. It already has everything configured for tracking tracking video plays, users registering, page views, scroll tracking, e-commerce events, and contact form 7. All you have to do is unpause the extra features if you decide you need them. So if you need to track users registering, just enable it. If you need to track user e-commerce events, enable it. By default, I just left those pieces turned off because they're less common. So here's where we dive into the plugin itself. I'm going to skip the whole thing on the slides and I'm going to show you the plugin configuration live because I've already configured mine, and why not? Let's look at it live. I'm brave. So the plugin itself is located under Settings and Google Tag Manager. The first thing you put in, you just need to put in this tracking code, your Tag Manager tracking code, and then save it. Now, the reason I tell you to put in that code and save it first is because what will happen is it will turn this off when you first save it. So then you turn it back on and save it a second time. From experience, I don't know why it does that, but it always seems to turn it off when you first save the tracking code. Compatibility mode. Your mileage will vary on this, but for most modern themes, just leave it turned off and it just works. Astra, Generate Press, Oxygen, I mean, any of the really more modern themes. If you've got something off of Theme Forest, your mileage may vary. Because there's a lot of hit or miss out there of what's done. If it's based on something like Bootstrap, it's probably better off than if it's a hand coded. Each tab has a lot of information on it. Out of the box, there's not a lot that you have to configure in here. I'm going to go through the settings that I configure for what I like to be able to track. On the basic data, I like to track tags, categories, post types, author names. I don't track author IDs. Author IDs I don't understand why anybody would want to track that. So I don't enable that piece. But on posts, I pretty much track everything else because it gives me more flexibility in my analytics to massage the data into the right format for my needs. Search by default is not turned on. Just check the box and it will start tracking search terms. Cool. Nice and helpful. Yeah. Wholesale users will have a user role, custom user role. Yes. Visitors. This one, I like to tinker with this one because I like to track this so that not that I like to track this. I like to have this available to me so that I can exclude admin users. So I've got to know the logged in status and user role to be able to exclude the user role and from tracking. And I might track a username, but I never track emails, creation dates. This one down here, use as you determine works best for your needs. But tracking the visitor IP can be problematic in certain locations and depending upon what you're doing with it. I am not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be one in real life, but I don't like talking to them either. Browser OS, turn it all on. This is good data. This is really good data. When you know that your users are coming in on that 8K Retina display, and they're not coming in on that little flip phone, well, we can put much nicer, prettier pictures out there. When our users are coming in on low end flip phones, well, obviously we want to have a much more streamlined site. So I like collecting this browser OS data. Plus, it's kind of neat when your client thinks, oh, all of my users are Mac users, and you show them, no, they're using Microsoft phones. I don't know why, but people do still use those. Weather and geodata, the only one that I really find important is the Cloudflare country code. Turning that one on Yes, you notice all of these are marked as experimental. But turning on that Cloudflare country code when you're running Cloudflare and proxy, it allows you to know where they're actually coming in from. Because otherwise you just know they're coming through Cloudflare. But Cloudflare will actually tell you, oh no, these people are in the US, they're in Latvia. This last one, site, only pertains if you're using multi-site. If you're not using multi-site, it's completely useless to you. So ignore that one. You can actually go through each one of these tabs, tag everything, and hit save once. You do not need to save it at each one. I have not tried going across the entire system, but I've done everything under basic data and saved it without a problem. Events. This is logging in, registrations, form fills, and if you want to track video plays. It also does SoundCloud. Now, scroll tracking, I don't know why it's not enabled by default. I think this is an important one to know, especially if we're building landing pages. When did they convert? When did they convert? Scroll tracking. This one's great. Now, these next couple sections, these are more when you're working with a larger group. Do you want to disallow certain tags from ever firing on your website? You can actually come in here and say, I want to allow all except, block all except, or disable specific ones. And you can block different things from ever firing on your website. If this is your own personal website, if you don't want it to fire on your website, don't install it. But when you're working with a marketing team and they've decided that they're going to run, I don't know, let's say they're going to run Hotjar. Okay, great. What's the competitor to Hotjar? Don't let them run that one side by side. That might be something you want to do. You also have the ability to block certain triggers and variables and keep them from running. I don't usually use these features. I usually have, I've been lucky enough that the marketing groups I've worked with have been less frustrating than, and have not required me to use this functionality. Now, you'll notice that we've never gotten to e-commerce. That's here under integration. We have the ability to turn things on, and it's smart enough to know whether or not you should turn them on. It is thankfully telling me that I am not running Contact Form 7, so I should not turn this feature on. So I can skip right past it. CookieBot. That's the one that they recommend for cookie consent. So WooCommerce. If I'm going to do WooCommerce, it'll tell me, oh, hey, you're not running it. Okay, fine. I don't turn it on. But since I am, I pretty much check every box rolling through here, except the very last one. And there's a reason for that. And I'm going to make this bigger. It prevents double tracking. If I check it, it may double track certain things. So I leave that one turned off. Everything else I turn on because I want to be able to track and gather the information. Product IDs are useless to me. I mean, if somebody tells me my product is number 37, well, that just means that it was the 37th post item generated on my website. It means nothing to me. But a SKU number that says 47985. Oh, okay. Well, 47985 is this thing right here. It's useful. Product IDs are just they're not helpful. So I come through, turn on the pieces that I need. Generally for me, it's only the WooCommerce tab. Google Optimize is going away, and AMP. There is a section here under advanced where you can enable things like do not track, where you can exclude certain user roles. The do not track, it does say it's deprecated. I've never used that functionality. And for me, I like to do my user roles right at the top so that I can be a little more graceful about where I want them to be excluded. For instance, if I exclude an administrator here, I can't debug because it's completely excluded when I do it here. If I do it at Tag Manager, I can do it while I can still debug, and I can go through and do things. Which will bring us back to that point. When I am in here, I have a preview button. So I've built everything out. I've made changes. I've got everything set. But before I click submit, I can preview. And it will allow me to say, okay, great. Let's take this preview. Let's run it against our site. Now, you've got to obviously have Tag Manager, have the plugin configured at your site. But I put my domain name in, click connect, and it allows me to pop through and start seeing my data information. I'm using a dummy container, so it's not going to actually work right now. But what would happen on my site is when I look at my site, okay, hold on. Data Slayer. There we go. Okay, so what's going to happen is Data Slayer is going to start looking at the information, and it knows, oh, I'm logged in as an administrator, username, IP address, page title, all my information. Let me switch this back to the bottom here. Oh, that'll work actually. So now if I was to come in here into my store and start adding a product into the cart, small. There we go. You see, okay, I'm on a product list. I'm opening up a product. It sees that information. It knows what my SKU number is. It's got my item name, pricing. When I add it to the cart, it tracks that information. It reads that information, and it knows, oh, okay, this is when the item was created. This is it's in the cart. Value of the cart. Price of the cart. What the actual total is in the cart and everything. So as it goes through, it's collecting all of this information, and Data Slayer allows you to see this information live. So when you're troubleshooting, Data Slayer is great for testing. The preview plugin, the preview mode, is when I'm testing before deploying a new container. Let me just pop through these slides and see what I had at the end for you. Questions while I'm speed clicking.
Yeah. Hey, Eric, just another quick question here. I saw that there was a Contact Form 7 integration, and I know you're using Gravity Forms.
Correct.
So I didn't see anything for Gravity Forms in there. So
Correct. By default, Gravity Forms is not part of this. Gravity Forms does have a plugin that integrates directly with Tag Manager. Sorry. Yeah, it does Tag Manager. It also does analytics. I don't like the plugin. But because of the way I run my forms are not doing an Ajax return. They're actually sending you to a secondary page. So I just track the secondary page. I did that because I found this is where I discovered an end user issue. If the end user has filled out a form on the site, gotten their Ajax confirmation, closed their browser, and then the next time they relaunch the browser and it reloads that tab, it submits the form a second time.
So you don't run Ajax with Gravity Forms. So
Nope.
I put a Gravity form down in the footer area, and of course, if you
Well, now
just,
that one I do Ajax.
okay, yeah,
So like my newsletter sign up is running Ajax down in the footer. But if I have an actual form page,
right, okay,
like a contact page, I actually send them to a confirmation page. Partly because I can say, oh, hey, now that you're on the confirmation page for filling out the form, do you want to sign up for the newsletter? Do you want to go look at some blog posts? Do you want to search? I can send them to doing other stuff.
okay.
Okay, so I know I talked fast. I'm reading Carrie's question. Maybe. Wow, that was a great answer. So if you're already configured to use Tag Manager without the plugin, do I recommend the plugin? Maybe. It depends how you're configured to run it. If you're running SiteKit will deploy Tag Manager. You can do that. That's fine. If you've embedded it in your theme and it's your site and you're the only one that works on it, nah, you don't have to switch. If you work for a company and there's a possibility of somebody doing something that causes Tag Manager to stop working, like changing the theme, then I would highly recommend putting it in a separate plugin. And people can unmute. I am done talking. I did my best to hit the 1 hour mark right on. I am done talking, and I like answers and questions and stuff. And if nobody asks, I'll pick on somebody.
Well, I'll just say that was the best presentation on Tag Manager you've done so far.
Cool.
Yeah, that was great detail. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, absolutely. And for those of you that have heard me speak before, thank you for showing up. It makes me feel good that people actually like what I'm talking about. For those of you that are new, thanks for showing up. It means somebody else told you I had something good, or the topic just looked good.
32. That's pretty good.
Yeah. So I have a question, Eric, about the IP address, that little checkbox that you didn't check when you were in that plugin. Is that anonymize the IP when you do that, or is it just not send it at all?
Hold on, let me see. The plugin I
remember where it
believe
was.
we were looking at here. Nope.
Yeah, that one.
No, this includes the visitor's IP address.
The complete IP address.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's why I say use as you see fit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I currently have it tagged because and when it comes to GDPR, here I'll give everybody my take on on who's covered by GDPR. If you're an EU citizen, resident, or the data traverses the EU, you're protected. Basically, everybody. Because my idea on who should be given good protection of their data on my website, everybody. I mean, if you just treat everybody's data the way you want your data treated, the world's a better place.
Yeah.
But that's my opinion.
Mhm.
I
Well,
have
and
lots of
there's-
them.
and there's 6 new privacy laws in the US now. So
Yeah.
there's and the meetup about security that we did, somebody did 2 weeks ago. There was an interesting question brought up that there was no answer, because the laws basically say if you're you have to do these things if you make over 25 million, but it also says you are in business with a third party, then they're also part of your rules. So, if we're using a plugin like Google Analytics, who is a company who has more than $25 million in revenue income, does that mean we're now set up under the 25 million? So that was a question that didn't get answered. So that's a lawyer question, but
Well, and I ran into one the other day. I installed a new Stripe plugin on my website,
there you go.
and the first thing that it says is, okay, connect to your Stripe account. Uses the nice little Stripe interface that you just press the magic button, and it says log into Stripe, and then it auto creates the keys. And then the next thing I know, I've got an email signing me up for a newsletter using my Stripe credentials from this plugin developer.
Ooh.
Well, now my Stripe email address is different than the admin email address on my website, and it's also different from the user email address on my website,
Mm-hmm.
which means they've read my Stripe credentials, which to me says, what else are they collecting that they're not telling us about?
Mm. Yeah, well, that's America for you.
Well, yes, it is, and that's why I promptly yanked that plugin off of my site. And I may have sent a little note along to WordPress and said, yeah, you might look into this.
I have a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, shoot.
I don't know how smart this or dumb this question is, but it says you showed one of the settings, triggers, and analytic collection pieces on the plugin where you could collect what country they're
Oh, okay,
coming.
yes.
If they're VPNing, if they're bouncing around on a VPN, how true is that collection?
Okay, so this you're talking about the Cloudflare country code.
Yeah.
And the Cloudflare country code is going to return the IP, the country of the IP that hits Cloudflare.
So if there,
So if I hit a VPN, I'm in Dallas. If I hit a VPN and showed up as France, Cloudflare is going to report me as being in France.
okay,
Yes. Yeah. There are no ways that I know of that are going to de-anonymize and unravel VPN to figure out where people came from. And as a privacy person, I like that. As somebody that wants to know where people are coming from and who my troublemakers are, I don't like that. Which is an interesting place to be. Nobody else. Not even DK. Nothing really, huh?
I have a question.
Okay, shoot.
Is the ability to use the search console gone away in
No.
GA4?
No, Search Console is an entity on its own. And I still use Search Console. I still connect GA4 and UA to Search Console. Let me see. Let me see.
Well, you got to give them a sitemap there too. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I still pop in. I still pop into Search Console. And then I will still connect. Where did they move this stuff to? Nope, that's not it. There we go. I'll still do my connections and connect YouTube channels and Google Analytics and things to Search Console.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And I mentioned earlier the idea of using verification settings inside of Tag Manager. Because Google's like, oh, just embed this code into the header of your site and we'll verify your site. Okay, great. But Google verifies your site and then they'll check back periodically, but not on every page visit. So I usually put it into DNS. And the reason I'm mentioning that I put it into DNS is because Cloudflare has given us something that is just great recently. They gave us the ability to put notes into DNS.
Yeah.
So inside of my DNS, I can actually put a note that says that this record is for Postmark, which
Nice.
great. I mean, I love that idea because when you start looking at a domain, I mean, this one's not bad. I mean, this one doesn't have a lot of records, but when you start looking at some of the domains and you're like, oh wait, there's 200 entries. What are these things? How do I unravel these things? These notes really make it kind of neat and nifty.
Thanks.
Yep.
Eric, do you tend to rely on just the native Google supplied stuff for reports? Do you generate any reports for your clients? And are you using any extra plugins that tie into the Google data to do it?
Actually, the only most of my clients, the reports that they get are generated from main WP. I give them the basic from main WP on their monthly maintenance report that shows that gives them the analytics tracking for their site, and that's about it.
They pay attention to it. That's
no, and that's why I don't give them anything more.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish they would pay more attention to it. So, Michelle, I'm going to make a shameless plug that you really need to be here next month to see the reports. Because that's we're going to dive deep into GA4 and look at the reports on there. Tag Manager itself is more of a traffic cop. It says, take this data and send it to analytics. Take this data, send it to Facebook, send it to. So it's moving stuff around, and it's just kind of pointing at something. And Carrie, I personally hate SiteKit. I missed that question. SiteKit is one of those ones that I'm not a fan of. It tries to do things for me, and I find that plugins that try to do things for me don't always take into account what I actually want them to do.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean it's got good reviews. I know a lot of people like it. I'm not a fan.
One other thing, Eric, in regard, I have a client, a B2B company, and they actually have subscribers that can now only view the website. So can you just track subscribers only with this pretty easily?
Yeah.
And so I have they have editors in there. I put in advanced editors.
Yeah. No, I mean,
just
actually, what I would do is I would come over here, and I would under my trigger, I would this one here. What I would do is I would um um uh yeah, you can hold on. I would do page view, some page views, um, visitor logged in state, um, logged in, um, and I would do visitor type equals subscriber.
Oh, okay. And they'll recognize that as the WordPress subscriber.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what the visitor types are for. It
Okay.
allows me to it allows me to just pick it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I use regex here is because it lets me wildcard it and do multiples.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason I built most of it the way I did, was because, okay, great, I'm doing admin users, but what site? I have a site that I work on. It's a nonprofit. There are half a dozen people that log in and do back end work, but they each have a custom user role. Because it's okay. It's not an editor, because they don't have full editor access. For instance, one user can log in and edit one page only. Is anybody here? Sean Connery, sorry, Alec Baldwin, one ping only. Sorry, I watched that the other day.
Yes, Vasily, one ping only.
Yeah.
That was a good
So,
movie.
I've got it set so that one user can access just a single page. A different user can edit, create new posts, edit existing posts, delete unpublished posts, but not delete live posts. Basically, we tried to engineer out the ability to make mistakes, and we've been pretty good at it. But because of that, I've got like a dozen different custom user roles on the site. I mean, the shop manager has the ability to go in and change the status of orders, but that's it. They can't do anything else except change the status of orders.
Yeah,
because they just need to be able to say that Zelle order, that they received the Zelle payment, and change it to complete. So, now there are other things that you can do with it. If you want to do pixel tracking, here's a basic for doing yeah,
phone number.
Sorry, that's not the one. Where is it? There we go. For Facebook, it's just dropping a single HTML tag, but you can exclude it from certain views. I was working on one for Gravity Forms.
Can I ask you the pixel? How do you tell if that's working?
Facebook has a tester that allows you to read it.
Okay,
but there's also a there's a browser extension that works as well.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So I was actually working on Gravity Forms tracking, but this one is actually based on this is based on pulling a small piece of JavaScript every time the page fires. So I was tinkering with that. This is the one I tend to use a lot, is click tracking. Anytime somebody clicks on contact link clicks,
Mhm.
even to the point of tracking SMS links. And you'll notice the variables, I still have that GA4 property in the GA settings because I reuse that variable everywhere. So that as I look at it, it's like, nope, there's my link tracking. And it's just a bunch of regex deciding whether or not to track it. There's a lot that you can do inside of Tag Manager. I mean, it's insane how much you can do with it. Even tracking page load times.
Really?
Yep. This one actually tracks page loads.
Are you talking about a specific page or just in general? I hear.
This one is tracks all page loads.
Oh, page. Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But it excludes any pages that load in less than 0 seconds.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, so if the page loads quicker than that, it excludes it, and then just tracks everything else. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do in here.
Yeah. This has been great. Wow.
Yeah, Tag Manager. Not a lot of people have done it manually. David Shargle mentioned this plugin to me a year and a half ago because I was hating what I was using.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, this is what I use for Tag Manager. And I tried it out and never looked back.
Hmm.
It's just the power of what I can do between the plugin and Tag Manager is just amazing.
Eric, do you have any courses on writing tags?
No. But if you have something interesting in mind, send me an email. Because I may have a resource I can point you at.
Okay.
Or it may be something that I say, oh, hey, that looks like a really cool idea, and I'll go figure out how to do it and let you know.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
like cool ideas.
I see a new meetup challenge to Eric.